This is Marion Martin. Today is January 29th, 1990, and I'm doing a second interview of Mr. Aresta Aluisio. We're at his office above his store.
Years ago,
Mr. Aluisio,
Yes.
you were going to tell me how you met Mrs. Aluisio.
Oh, yes. Okay, well, I needed a bookkeeper. So,
What year was this?
what year?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I wouldn't know. I have no idea. But anyway...
Do you know about how old you were?
No. Maybe 32 or 33.
Oh, okay. So this was about 1939,
Yeah,
10 years after the crash.
probably.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed a bookkeeper, so somebody recommended her and sent her in to see me. And I hired her. And she was so efficient that I kept her. And after a while we got married.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Had you not known her when she was growing up?
No, I didn't know. I knew her father.
Mm-hmm.
Her father was also a fireman. He was a member of the Hook and Ladder. That was Charlie Cook.
Oh, her maiden name was Cook.
Yes. And Charlie Cook was her father. He was a member of the Hook and Ladder.
Uh-huh. What year was Mrs. Aluisio born? Do you know?
No.
How long did you court her before you were married?
How long what?
Did you court her before you were married?
Oh, probably a year.
Uh-huh. Where were you married?
We were married in the St. Matthew's Church. And then we had a small reception home.
Mm-hmm. Where had she grown up?
Where did she grow up?
Mm-hmm.
She grew up over in, before we got married, she lived at William Street.
William Street. That's in Uniontown.
No, that's just the other side of the bridge.
That's right.
It's the next block beyond Washington Avenue.
Right. Was her father connected with the Tower Ridge Yacht Club? Did he work there?
No, that was one of her cousins.
Did her father work at the school?
No, that's another cook.
Okay.
Yeah.
What-
That's another cousin of some relation.
Mm-hmm. Does she have sisters and brothers in Hastings today?
No, she has two sisters.
Mm-hmm.
One lives in Cape Cod, and the other one lives in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm. And so she had grown up in Hastings, but you had never known her
No.
until you were 32 years old, and she came in to work for you. How much younger was she than you?
Much.
10 years more?
Yeah, 11.
11 years. I see.
11 years.
Uh-huh. And then, were you living at home with your mother then?
Yes.
And that's on Prescott Place?
Yeah. Well, yes. 6 Prescott Place.
Mm-hmm. Is that house on the corner of Rosedale now?
On the corner of Rosedale and Prescott.
It's stucco.
Mm-hmm.
Right. How did it look when you were growing up? It's quite a large house now.
Well, we put an addition on it.
Mm-hmm.
There was an addition added to it. Yeah, it's a good size house.
Mm-hmm. Someone asked me to ask you if you remembered anything about the Le Boutelier family when you were growing up.
What family?
Le Boutelier?
Well, yeah, they owned the property over in Uniontown, I believe, across the way from the Fragger Garage.
Right.
That would be that property, the corner of the Ravensdale Road and Farragut.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that's the, yeah.
Do you remember anything about that?
Yeah, well, I used to go in there and steal their grapes.
Did you?
They had grape arbor in there, which we could go into Ravensdale Road,
Uh-huh.
and we just went in there and just take some grapes. It was all fenced around.
It was?
Yeah. I didn't know the people, I just knew the place was there.
Uh-huh. Did they have horses or cows or anything?
Not that I know of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was only on a property maybe twice.
I see. Were there any farms in the Mount Hope area when you were a young boy, little kid, like 1911, 1912, where they still had cows or sheep or anything?
Well, the only cows the little farm was over on Curry's property, Judge Curry's
Yes.
property.
Uh-huh.
He had a good-sized farm. That's the only farm that I know of.
Mm-hmm. And he had livestock on the farm?
I really don't know. I think he had horses. I don't know about any cows or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Now, you told me in the last interview how after the crash you operated a steam laundry on Farragut Avenue, and then after a couple of years of that, you
Well, I operated that laundry in Hastings for exactly 1 year.
Mm-hmm. And then you went into Manhattan and
Then we
worked?
went to New York, opened up in New York.
Mm-hmm. And you did that for about how long?
About another year.
Mm-hmm. And so then you came back to Hastings to work?
That's right.
And tell me what you did then.
Well, I had a lot of customers, and I turned those customers over to Younker's Perfect Laundry.
Mm-hmm.
And then I gradually started to pick up some customers, and I went back into business.
You mean electrician?
Yeah, electrical business.
Right, okay. Now, how did you get started in the store?
Well, I rented the store from, the building was owned by Dr. Smith, the eye doctor. He happened to be my eye doctor at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, but the agent was William Edwards,
Mm-hmm.
and I rented the store through him.
I believe you told me once that you had known this building well
Mhm.
before you rented the store.
Mhm.
Can you tell me what about that?
Well, it was on fire.
Okay.
There was another hardware store here before me, but it was operated by William Shoshat.
Can you
Yes.
spell that?
Schochat.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's right, but it's close.
Yep.
And that went on fire, and did quite a bit of damage, and then it was fixed up, and it laid idle for a while, and then I took it over.
Did you fight the fire?
Yes. Mhm.
Tell me a bit about the fire. Was it very extensive?
Yes, blew the front windows out, and well, it took quite a while. It took quite a while to put it out. We had Yonkers was up to giving us a hand, and we had hoses from the VFW property shooting down. We had hoses from Warburton Avenue, and then we had a hose coming through the alleyway into the building.
Mm-hmm. How do you think the fire started? Did anyone know?
Nobody seemed to know.
Uh-huh. And what role did you play in the fire?
Just a fireman, just helping.
Okay. And then after the fire, after the building burned, what happened next?
Well, somebody fixed it. I don't know who it was, whether it was the insurance company or who restored the building to original.
Mm-hmm. Did Mr. Sochat ever open his business again after the fire?
No, he didn't last very long after that. I imagine about 2 years later he passed away.
Mm-hmm. And so then what happened to the building?
Well, it laid empty for a while, and then I rented it from.
Uh-huh. When
So
Mr.
that was-
Sochat had the business, was the building owned by Dr. Smith then?
Yeah, well, yes. He had, well, it was, legally it was owned by Shoshat, but Dr. Smith had the mortgage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Was that typical in those days that an individual would hold the mortgage
Well,
rather than a bank?
yeah, well, a lot of individuals do now.
Really?
Sure. But those days, I think it was more so.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So then you rented it for a while, and
I rented for, I would say, about, maybe 2 years. And then one day, Bill Edwards came in and said, why don't you buy the building? And I told him I didn't have any money to buy the building. And he said, well, he said, I'll fix it up so with your payments, your mortgage payments won't be any greater than your rent. I said, you will? He said, yeah. I said, okay. So we come back a month or so later and with all the papers, and we signed up, and that's it.
How much were the monthly mortgage payments?
No, I don't remember.
Uh-huh. Do you remember how much the building was?
No.
It's always interesting to hear how much those buildings were in those days.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I'd like to know myself.
Mm-hmm. Well, it must have been a big thing to stock the store, though. I mean, you were starting up a business.
Yes, well, the store wasn't that big, of course. It was only 548.
Uh-huh.
Now it's 548 and 550. I built the addition next to it.
Mm-hmm.
But originally I had a petition halfway down because I knew I couldn't fill the store up and it wouldn't look good. So I put a petition up there. After about a year, I had to move the petition back because the store became too small.
Right. Now, who had a store on the other side of the partition?
Oh, that was the Hastings Diner. There was a diner there.
Right. But you put a partition up inside the store.
Yeah, the north and south, to shorten up the store.
Right. Okay. So did then the other people entered from the back?
Well, in the back of the store at that time was the warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
The big warehouse extended out into the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
And the along north of the store, 548, it was 550. That's where the Hastings Diner was.
Who owned that diner?
Oh, it changed hands several times. One of the Fred something took it over, and with his sister, Mrs. Zanke. She had her fingers in there. She worked here. Let's see. Fred and Mrs. Zanke were in-laws. Mrs. Zanke was Fred's sister-in-law.
How do you spell Zanke?
Z-A-N-K-E.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought that then, and then I moved it to Spring Street.
What year did you buy the diner? Do you have any idea? Was it before you married Mrs. Aluisio?
Yes.
Uh-huh. So the late 30s?
I would say so, roughly.
Uh-huh. And then you moved it so that, what?
We moved the diner over to the Spring Street where the funeral parlor is now.
Uh-huh. Did you operate it there?
Oh, no. I set it all up, ready to operate, and then somebody rented it. And then I built the addition next door.
Uh-huh.
I built the showroom, only halfway down, half the size that it is now.
Uh-huh.
And the back part was where the diner had their kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And when they wanted to build the parking lot in the back, the village wanted to take the warehouse and the kitchen of the old diner. So I guess I told you how we arrived at leaving the space the way it is,
Right.
the size of the
Right.
addition and so on.
Yeah. When they built the parking lot, do you know why they named it after Mr. Boulanger?
Well, Joe Bollinger was he was president of the Hastings Businessmen's Association, and he had, I think it was his idea to build a parking lot there,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why they named it after him.
Mm-hmm. Does the Hastings Businessmen's Association still exist?
Well, it's the Chamber of Commerce now.
Oh, right,
It's the
okay.
same thing.
That was the predecessor.
Yeah. Well, I was president of the Businessmen's Association also for a while.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, you told me in the last interview that you joined Uniontown Fire Company in 1928,
Mm-hmm.
when you were 21 years old. And I was hoping you could tell me what it was like then. Tell me about the old building.
Well, it was an old wooden building, and it was heated with coal stove, and then later on they put in the furnace and put in the heating. And after a while we got rid of the coal and we put in an oil burner. all the fire companies in Hastings at that time all bought their own equipment, their own fire truck. They paid their own coal bills or oil bills. They paid for their own electricity. And if we needed a raincoat, we had to buy it. Any hoses, all the hoses, we had to buy the hoses. And we didn't even have any insurance. If anybody got hurt going to a fire or at a fire, the village, all the village did was pay the doctor bills.
Hmm.
And but we had a lot of fun.
How did the members of each of the fire companies pay for their own equipment? And they paid for the fire trucks?
Yeah. And we bought our own fire trucks, we bought our own hoses, our own raincoats and hats.
Mm-hmm. How did you pay for that? That must have been very expensive.
Well, so the dues. We paid dues. You want to be a fireman in Hastings, you got to pay dues.
How much was the dues when you joined?
About 50 cents a month.
But now that wouldn't have bought a fire truck. You know.
Well, it wouldn't. The fire trucks we bought were used fire trucks. They were new. So they probably went for about $4,000 or $5,000.
Mm-hmm. And you got no help from the village?
No.
In the 1920s or before then?
No.
For equipment?
Not even insurance on the men.
Wow. Do you recall anyone being seriously injured in a fire, or did a fireman ever get killed in a fire?
That's a good question. We had one, Francis from Review Manor, got to a fire, was on Review Manor's truck, and up on Euclid Avenue, he had a heart attack and died. I forgot his name. He was an awful nice guy. I think he was captain of the Manor at the time.
And his first name was Francis?
I think his last name was Francis.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
If you're not used to fighting these fires, you know, when that whistle goes off, you know, could be a little nerve-wracking, you know.
Right.
You get all excited and, you know, you don't know what you're going to get. And we used to have a whole lot more fires than we have now.
Oh, really?
Oh, sure, because oil stoves were a big thing, oil stoves, and they had the kerosene in the back porches and stuff like that. I remember we had one call early about 5 o'clock one morning down at the bottom of Washington Avenue. This fellow was pouring kerosene into the fire of the stove, and the kerosene went all over him, and he went on fire.
Oh.
And we tried to pick him up. We picked up by the feet, his skin came off in our hands.
Oh.
And of course we didn't have no ambulance. We put him in the back of the truck. We took him to Gosford Hospital, but he died a couple hours later.
Wow. Do you remember about what year that was? That's okay.
I would say about probably about 1930, somewhere in there.
Was that the only case where you actually had to, you know, pick up someone who was so severely burned that they died?
Well, we had another call. Let's see, that must have been about 1942 over on Soma River Road. There was a little house over there, used to be a little farmhouse, where the manor house is now. And we got a call there when...
Where, what's it called?
The manor house, or Sandrock.
Sandrock, yes.
Sandrock.
Okay. Now called the manor house, all right.
Yeah. And we got a call there one morning of the fire, and I walked into the building, and the guy right behind me with the hoses and everything, and we had to step over this girl laying on the floor. And so the guy's getting hoses in, and I says to the lady, I says, "Did you call a doctor?" She says, "No." I said, "You mean to tell me there's a girl laying on the floor and you don't call a doctor?" And I gave her the devil. So I picked up the telephone, I called up the police and to get a doctor over, and he was having trouble locating a doctor rather. And finally we did get a doctor over, but it was too late. They couldn't do nothing. We tried to resuscitate her, but it didn't work. She probably lay there quite a while.
She had been overcome by smoke?
Yeah. It seems that she might have been smoking a cigarette, and the couch got on fire.
I see. Were those the only two cases of people who have died in fires that you fought in Hastings?
No. Oh, we had the Rich Street fire.
Tell me about that.
The Rich Street fire where Con Edison blew up Rich Street because of the gas main breaking. And the gas escaped into the buildings on both sides of the street. And both sides of the street was on fire. And Mrs. Zelenke, I think her name was Zelenke, her husband was a janitor in the school. And she's trying to run out of the house. And the porch was all burnt away, and she fell down into the fire.
Oh.
And the blaze was so terrific, we just couldn't get near her.
And people saw it happen?
Yeah.
Oh.
They just fall right in there. So we couldn't do it. So we lost 3 buildings that time.
Wow.
Bernie Hoff was chief at the time, and he called for help. That's one thing. I never called for help when I was chief. I figured this way. We got the best equipment you can buy, and we have a department where everybody works and works hard, and it's even hard to keep them out of the building from getting hurt. And but it was a big thing, and the buildings were burning on both sides of the street, and the street was on fire. And Con Edison couldn't turn the gas off because they didn't know where the valve was to turn the street off. See, so. After a long time, some old timer come down got used to work for Con Edison. He said, "I know where that valve is," and they went over and he turned it off.
Oh.
But that took a long time.
When you say a long time, how long do you mean?
No, I think it took a couple of hours. Yeah, and then Yonkers come up to help us, but they didn't do anything. They just got in the way. They got into a fight with the Das Ferry was down also. They got in a fight with the Das Ferry fire chief. Well, the Das Ferry fire chief was right. The Yonkers fire, when they come in and they're on Wilbrayton Avenue up in the apartment looking at TV. Because I saw them, I was up there and I saw them looking at the TV. And the Yonkers firemen really didn't do anything.
Right.
The Das Ferry boys did a lot of good work.
Now tell me, during that fire and while you were waiting for Con Ed to turn off that valve, did you and your men, I mean I know Bernie Hoffman was chief, but did you and the men feel that you were really in danger there?
Well, to have a fire like that, there's always a certain amount of danger.
Right.
You've got to know when to go in and when not to go in.
Was that the scariest fire you ever fought in Hastings?
Well, that was serious. That was serious, and the Tarowski fire was another serious fire, and of course we had the Hastings pavement block. That was a serious fire. Then we had the school fire. That was a good fire also.
Tell me about the school fire.
The school fire, that was the middle school.
Oh, what year was that?
I don't know.
Okay, actually we have a photograph in the archive, so seems like it was maybe the 1930s or?
I would say so. Yeah, it had to be in the 30s. It had a hip roof, you know, then that burnt off and they made a flat roof out of it.
Oh.
Yeah.
A hipped roof. Now what is a hipped roof?
Well, you know, like a gable.
Oh.
And so that burnt off and then they made a flat roof out of it.
Right. And that was a scary fire?
Oh, yeah, that was a big fire. Yeah.
How did that start?
We never seem to know. It just started one night. It was a funny thing. We just got through, we just closed up the bazaar over at Uniontown. And we were talking there, about an hour later, the alarm came in. And how it started, nobody ever didn't know how it started.
About how many hours did it take to put it out?
Oh, I think we were there about 4 hours.
How long were you at the Ridge Street fire, fighting that fire?
Pardon me?
How long were you at the Ridge Street fire, fighting that one? How many hours?
On that one? I wasn't.
Ridge Street.
Oh, Ridge Street. Ridge Street fire. I would say about 5 hours. And then, of course, you know about Con Edison blowing up the municipal building.
No, tell me about that.
Oh, you didn't hear about that?
Mm-mm.
Well, they had a gas leak down there. And, of course, they never admitted it.
Now, was this before World War II?
That was just before World War II. Let's see, Frizzell was village manager. I don't know what year it was.
Okay.
Anyway.
Who was the mayor? Do you remember who was the mayor?
John Philly, I believe.
John Philly?
Philly, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm home having dinner and the phone rings, and who's on the phone but Frizzell, the village manager. He says, "Hey, Roost," he says, "your oil burners just blew the building apart."
Oh, your oil burner. You had sold it and installed it?
Yeah. So nicely, I said, "Gee, wait, boy, this is it." So I jumped in my truck and I run down there, and the first thing I did, I put my head inside the building, and my oil burner was all intact. The boiler, everything was all intact. I said, "It's not the oil burner," said. So anyway, it blew the door, took the explosion was so great, I took the two overhead doors and blew them over Push Cronell's head. He was one of the policemen.
Right. Now, where are the overhead doors?
The overhead door on Maple Avenue, where you look at the...
Underneath the police department?
Right.
Oh.
And it blew the doors right over his head. And I didn't see that, of course, I wasn't there, but this is what I'm told. And then it knocked down brick partitions in the basement, and raised the stairway going up to the second floor, raised that, and raised the skylight up. Did a lot of damage.
Oh.
So we didn't know. I was making a lot of telephone calls. I called up a trustee by the name of Bentley, because we had a lot of batteries down there. And we thought maybe the fumes from the batteries.
Why did they have batteries down there?
For the alarm system.
Oh, for the fire department.
That's where you get the energy to operate the siren and so on. And so we thought maybe the gas is from the battery, because it went off exactly at 12 o'clock. We used to blow the siren then at 12 o'clock. Now we blow the siren at tests at 4:30. At those days we used to do it at 12. So when the siren went off at 12, the building went up, because the sparking from the controls.
Is that what happened?
From the relays, yeah.
Oh.
The relays, when the relays going on and off at the 12 o'clock test, there's a spark, and that spark is what set the building off. It's what ignited the gas.
Okay, so it wasn't Con Edison's fault?
What?
It wasn't Con Edison's fault?
No, it was. So we were down there. Frank Teasdale, he was the custodian of the fire department. So we're down there that night, about 10 o'clock at night. And Frank and I are sitting there at the desk and we're talking, wondering what happened. How could this thing happen? Oh, as I started to say, I called Bentley up to see if those fumes would set the building off. He was village trustee. I called him up in his office. He says, no, he says, I wouldn't do it.
Was he an engineer or something?
Well, he was with a company who made big batteries, commercial batteries.
So he would be in a position to know.
So he would know, yeah. And he said, no, that wouldn't do it. So anyway, Frank and I were down there and we're looking, and the room down there was maybe twice the size of this room. And I'm looking over in the corner, I see a haze coming up from a pipe.
A haze?
Yeah, a haze, yeah. I said, hey Frank, look at that. Well, I went over and smelled it, and it was gas. So Frank went over and smelled it. He said, yeah, that's gas, all right. So that's what happened. The gas came in from the pipes from the Maple Avenue, in through that pipe, and it filled the room up with gas. So I went up to the police department, I called the Con Edison, and I told them that day they blew up our building because there's a gas leak, and we know where the leak is now, and so on. Well, in a short time, they had a lot of trucks down here, and they worked all night digging up the road to cut off the pipe, and they worked there all week. But they would never admit that it was their leak that did it.
That caused the explosion.
That caused the explosion. Well, I guess their insurance company paid for it anyway.
There was no fire with the explosion, though?
No, there was no fire. It was strictly an explosion.
And nobody was hurt?
Nobody was hurt.
That was pretty lucky.
Very lucky, yes.
Right. You said that there was a custodian for the fire department.
Yeah, Frank Teasdale.
Well, what would a custodian for the fire department do?
Well, the custodian takes care. He's got, like, we have an air compressor down there. And he's got to get down there every day, make sure the pressure's there's a tank up on
There was a tank on the roof of the municipal
there's a tank
building.
on the roof that contains the air. And above that tank, there's a big horn.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a piston in that horn. And when you have a fire, there's a relay that opens up the valve and lets the air from the tank into this air horn, and that's what the noise is when you hear the siren go off.
Mm-hmm.
And then down in the basement, there's a big air compressor that keeps that tank full when it goes off. So he's got to make sure that the compressor's always working, that the batteries that always have plenty of water in them and stuff like that.
Is there a custodian for the fire department today?
Oh, yeah.
Who is it today?
Today is D'Souza.
Walter D'Souza?
Well, the son.
Oh, Walter passed away, didn't he?
Walter passed away.
Yes. Who pays for the custodian? Or is that a volunteer?
The village pays for that
Oh.
now.
You were saying earlier that when you first joined Uniontown, that each company paid for its equipment and hoses and even the coats and everything. When did that change? When did the village start to pay for the equipment? And how did it change?
I think one thing that helped change it, I was going to a fire one day and in my car, and I almost had an accident. And so I went out and I bought a siren. And I put it right on the front of my fender. They had those big fenders those days. So I put this great big siren about this big. I put that right on top of the siren. And the siren cost me $96. So I sent the bill into the village. And Des Barry was mayor.
Were you chief at that time?
Yeah. Oh yeah, otherwise I wouldn't have the authority to buy it. I didn't have the authority anyway. But I bought it. I figured, And there was a guy up in the manor by the name of Charles Andrus. And him and I...
Andrus?
Andrus, A-N-D-R-E-S. He was a village trustee. And he wouldn't approve the bill. So they sent the bill back to me and I paid it.
$96?
Yeah.
Do you remember about when that was? What year?
No. So anyway, I brought it up to the company meeting. So up to the company meeting, and the company, we have 2 men from each company. They're what we call fire wardens. And every month they meet the second Tuesday of each month. So the warden brought up at the meeting, and everybody got so mad to think that they wouldn't pay for the siren. At the next board meeting, all the fire trucks were down in the municipal building, and all the firemen were down there, and they raised Cain, and they reimbursed me for the siren.
And do you think that was the first incident?
Well, I think that was probably the beginning. Yeah.
And then what happened next?
Well, then they bought. I think it might have been after the school fire. I don't know just when it was. Anyway, they bought 3 trucks, 3 Mack trucks, used trucks.
When you say they, you mean
village.
The village?
Yeah, they bought one for Protection Engine, and one for Uniontown, and one for River Manor. We had our own trucks anyway, but they were old, and I remember these guys on Protection. Roy Markley, for instance, he used to go up
Roy
there.
what?
Markley, M-A-R-K-L-E-Y. At the time of the fire, he'd go up there and try to start this truck and spin the...
Oh, it
the
had
crank.
one of those cranks?
Yeah, the crank on it, the starter. Sure, they had no self-starters. And he'd go up there, and I remember George Sackett he had a drugstore on Spring Street. And he was the gimpy guy. He used to run up Spring Street up to the firehouse and jump on a truck. And so these trucks were pretty old, so the village bought 3 second-hand trucks, 3 Macks. There was a fellow on Maple Avenue that worked for the Mack company. I can't think of his name.
Can you remember about what year these trucks were bought?
No, I don't know.
Because you could probably kind of remember like the model of the truck and how...
I know there were Mack trucks. There was one bought for Protection, one for Uniontown, one for the Manor. We had no hook and ladder yet, so
There was no hook and ladder company even.
Not at that time, so it had to be before before the Manor Company was organized.
You mean before hook and ladder was organized?
Before Hook and Ladder was organized. Let's see. The ambulance building the ambulance was organized in '55, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Years of service. The ambulance corps was started in 1955. This is a dinner we had in 1985.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's like a keychain with 30 years of service for the ambulance corps.
So,
Hook and ladder was formed before the ambulance corps, wasn't
oh
it?
yes, quite a while before.
Mm-hmm.
That was '55.
We probably have it in our archive from when we did that exhibit. We have the date for when Hook
Yeah.
and Ladder. I just don't remember it.
Yeah.
So the trucks, when the village bought the trucks, it was before Hook and Ladder was formed.
Right.
Uh-huh.
When
So
that-
they bought the 3 used trucks and
then from there on, I believe that's when they started to buy us the equipment.
mm-hmm,
The hose and raincoats and
mm-hmm,
pipe poles and shovels and axes and all
mm-hmm.
kinds of equipment we need.
You mentioned before something about a bazaar at Uniontown.
Yeah.
Did you used to have bazaars at the Uniontown Firehouse?
No. We had the bazaar over in the lot. Bootlears, you book.
Yeah, where Ravensdale
Yeah.
is.
And we took over that whole territory before they built any houses there.
Oh,
And one year it was so big that it even crossed Ravensdale Road before
Oh.
they built those houses there. And we had a high diver from way up on top of a tower dive into a water tank. And then across the street we had a guy on a tight rope with a motorcycle going across. And we had a big thing going.
this was like where Branford Road is.
No, this is where yeah.
It's south of
What's-
Ravensdale.
Yeah, what's Branford Road and Fenwick.
Yes.
Right. That's before they built any of those houses.
Mm-hmm.
The bazaar was so big.
Actually, the streets probably weren't there, were they?
What me?
The streets weren't even there.
No, there was no streets there.
Just big open land
That's
that
right.
had been the Le Boutelier farm.
Right. I remember one year when we were operating there, the mayor at that time was Steinschneider. And he come over and he was a pretty slick guy to go, you know. And anyway, yeah, we had gypsies over there, you know, to tell you their life's history and what's going to happen to you and what, you know. They were a bunch of crooks. Anyway, they tried to steal the mayor's wallet, and he got onto it. He probably had that experience before or knew about it, you know.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, he was over there, and I don't forget, they tried to get his wallet.
Now, was the bazaar sponsored just by Uniontown Fire Company or by all the fire companies?
Yeah. That bazaar over there, we had to run that bazaar over there for quite a few years, just for Uniontown.
Just Uniontown?
Yeah. But protection, they were running some kind of a bazaar too, by independent of everybody else. So I got them all together. I got the boys, River Manor, Protection, and the Hook and Ladder, and Uniontown. And I said, let's all get together, we'll have one big bazaar.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, okay, that's what we did for a good many years.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's where we got most of our money to build the house in Uniontown, the firehouse in Uniontown.
Right. Now, when you had the Uniontown bazaars in the Le Boutelier farm property, that had to be before like 1938 or something like that. Because the houses were built then, weren't they?
The houses come after that.
Oh, you think after?
The houses come after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have a Uniontown bazaar anywhere else? You know, after the houses, the development was
No.
done in the Ravensdale?
No, that's what we got, the whole department got
I
together.
see. Where did you have it where was the first one after the department?
At Reynolds Field.
Oh, Mm-hmm.
And but we made money, and a lot of the companies saved money, and as I said before, that's how we saved our money in Uniontown. That's how we built the firehouse.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have enough money to finish the firehouse.
Okay.
So anyway, I kept building and kept building, and so we finished it. After a while, they paid me off.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So it was well worth it. It's a nice firehouse.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Have you ever been in it?
I sure have. I've been
Yeah.
to a party there.
It's nice.
Very nice. Beautiful big room inside.
Yeah.
Tell me, we got away from the early years in the firehouse a little bit faster than I wanted to. You said that when you joined, there was the old wooden building, and the company paid for everything itself. Can you tell me about some of the other men who joined? You were 21 when you joined.
Mm-hmm.
What other members? What were they like? How old were they?
Well, we had a fellow by the name of Henry Shaw. He was the treasurer, and if the boys wanted to buy something, and he didn't think we should, he just wouldn't order it. He wouldn't pay for it. So he was tough that way. And he was right, because some of those fellows, they'd spend anything, they didn't care. But he was the watchdog of the money. And
What were the early meetings like when you first joined?
well, we had a lot of arguments about different things. I just can't say what, but we had some real hot arguments over there every meeting. But it was all for the good of the fire department.
Mm-hmm.
And after the meetings, there was never any hard feelings.
Mm-hmm.
We were all buddies, work
Mm-hmm.
together and fight together at fire, so you become buddies.
About how many people belonged to the fire company when you joined?
I don't know how many was in the whole department, but I know there for a while, we had, in Uniontown alone, we had about 75.
Mm-hmm.
And we closed the books for about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't take no one else in, because we just had too many. But I would say at one point there, we must have had about probably with the 4 companies, about 200 members.
Altogether?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we got a good department.
When you joined when you were 21 years old, were there some real old-timers?
Pardon me?
Were there some real old-timers in the company?
Oh, yes.
What were they like?
Well, they were firemen. Well, they were all a bunch of nice fellas, I don't know what.
Had any of them been there from the time that the company was founded?
Oh, sure. I'm sure there was a Uniontown. Must have been someone there when the company was founded. And of course, Uniontown was founded in 1899.
Mm-hmm.
And Protection was founded about 10 years before that. I don't know what their date is.
Mm-hmm.
There must have been fellows maybe like Mel Haynes and Capron, George Capron, and Harry Haynes. He's a cousin of Mel Haynes. They lived over there on High Street, and the Caprons lived over on High Street. And the Gorman family, probably, the old timers, the folks. Let's see, I don't know who else would be alive at that time.
Was the fire company the center of the social life for a lot of its members?
All the small towns. Now it isn't anymore, but those days it was.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, if you go up north in New York State now,
Mm-hmm.
the volunteer fire system is the center of social functions and so on.
Mm-hmm. What were some of the things that the firemen and their wives and their families did in those early years? What did they do together?
Well, we didn't do, as a whole, we didn't do much together. Before we built the firehouse, besides the bazaar, Uniontown used to run a dance once a month.
Once a month?
Yeah.
That's pretty often.
Well, we started down in Sikoritsky's Hall.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that. Oh,
Yeah, down in Washington Avenue. Did you hear of Sikoritsky's Hall?
sure.
Yeah, and then we,
That was when you had the old firehouse and there was no place
right,
to have a dance there?
right. Oh yeah, much before that.
Mhm.
That's how we got our money, raising, that was part of our building fund.
You mean having the dances?
Yeah,
Hmm.
and then from there we went up to the vets building. We had the dances up there once a month. We had the dugout downstairs. I don't know if you ever been in there.
Yes.
They have a dugout downstairs, what they call the dugout. That's where the bar is, and the dance floor upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to go out once a month and sell tickets
Mhm.
with different wages and so on. And we got quite a gang in there. Have a live orchestra, you know.
Hmm.
And we raised some. We didn't raise a lot of money because money those days was, you know, money was tight.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, if you got a dollar, it was worth a dollar.
Mm-hmm.
Today, you know, dollars isn't worth anything.
So this, when did the dances start at Sikoritsky's for Uniontown?
What, you looking for a date?
Well, about.
I don't know.
Did you go before you were married?
Oh yes.
Okay,
Oh,
so they
sure.
started well before
Oh,
1939.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. When you first joined the fire department in
Well,
1928?
few years after that.
Mm-hmm. Was anyone else in your family in the fire department in Uniontown?
Yeah, my brother Tom.
Mm-hmm.
He was a member. He was a member before me, and then he got out. Let's see. He was a member, and I think then he went into the Marines, and that was the end of him in the fire department.
Why is that?
Well, he joined the Marines.
Oh, and he stayed in the Marines.
Yeah,
I see.
yeah. He was very active in the Marines. They wanted to send him to, you know, make him a colonel or something. And he didn't mind it. He got out after that.
Mm-hmm. So you were actually the only one in your family. When you first joined, did you have any idea that it was going to be such a big part of your life?
No. No, it's just got interested in arguments and got, you know, interested in the fighting fires. One thing about fighting fires, once you're a fireman, no matter whether you're a member of Uniontown or the Protection or really matter if you're active enough,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if you really go to the fires and
Mhm.
answer all the alarms,
Mm-hmm.
it just sort of gets into your blood.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the fire department is your whole life.
Mm-hmm. How long did you actually really be active with the hoses and things at a fire?
Right away, right as soon as we got in there.
Well, I mean, until how long? When you were 50, were you still fighting the fires?
Oh, sure. I was fighting fires until, well, let's see. Last time I was chief. I think until about 12 years ago.
So when you were 71?
Yeah, about 70.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was chief, but you know,
Mm-hmm.
chief don't fight no fires, he just gives orders.
Right. And that was the fourth time you were chief.
That was the fourth time around, that's right.
Now, that rotation that you did,
Pardon me?
that rotation where you went through the whole
Right.
rotation,
You start up as an assistant chief. Now, you can't be an assistant chief unless you're a captain first.
mm-hmm.
And then you become first assistant chief if you come to election.
Well, now wait a minute, you can't be a captain until your first, how does the rotation start?
Well, it should start as second lieutenant,
Mm-hmm.
first lieutenant, and captain.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't have to be that way. You could be a captain without being a lieutenant.
I see.
But you can't be an assistant chief
Mm-hmm.
without being a captain first.
I see.
In other words, before you become an assistant chief, you have a certain amount of experience.
Mm-hmm.
So then, from first assistant, you go to second assistant chief, third assistant, and then you're chief.
I see. Were you a second lieutenant and a first lieutenant before you
Oh,
became
sure.
captain?
Oh, sure.
Mm-hmm. But
I-
then, years later, you didn't go back to being a second lieutenant
Oh,
again?
no.
No.
That's a demotion.
Right. So you just, but did you go back to being captain, or did you go back to
No.
being assistant chief?
No, well, each time. Well,
Yes.
it takes 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
2 years as first assistant, 2 years as second assistant, and so on. So it takes 8 years to complete each term as a chief.
I see.
So that was 4 times. That'd be 32 years.
And that's what you did.
Yep.
When did you complete that last term as chief?
I'll have to look that up.
Okay.
I think they have a record.
Is that on here?
No, it wouldn't be in there.
Okay.
No.
Were the 32 years uninterrupted?
Yes.
Okay. You never stepped back and took a year off. You were always an assistant chief of some sort, whether it was the first, second, third, or fourth.
That's right. In other words, every 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
the position of chief changes, goes to a
Mhm.
different company.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's in the hook and ladder. That's Charlie Hoffman,
Mm-hmm.
and he'll go out. His term will expire in April, and then Snippy will take. Bob Snippy will be the chief,
Mhm.
and it keeps rotating that way.
Mm-hmm.
You can only be chief for 2 years at a time.
Right. Okay. Tell me about some of the most memorable people that you've known in the fire department. Who do you think are some of the best firefighters that you've ever known in the Hastings companies?
Well, it's a funny thing. I don't think you can really pinpoint anybody,
Okay.
including myself. I would say that I'm any better than anybody else as far as fighting fires, but because, well, in the 32 years, I missed very few fires, if any. But you know, you have a fire today, and maybe you'll get a bunch of fellas there who wasn't there at the previous fire.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't. It's hard to rate them. But in our system, the way we operate, the way the volunteers operate, they're all anxious to get in there and put the fire out and go back to their own jobs.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the volunteer system is a better system than the paid system. Because the paid system, they're there because they're paid.
Mm-hmm.
And the volunteers are not. The volunteer's got a job to do. He's got a family to take care of. So he goes in there, he puts the fire out, he works hard, he puts the fire out, and takes care of his business.
Right. What do you think? Are you concerned at all about the future of volunteer firefighting in Hastings?
Yes. Yes, I'm concerned about it. The department's getting smaller all the time because a lot of people are commuting.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't too many jobs in Hastings for the young people, and the rents here are too high for young people. You know, they're just getting started.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not only in Hastings, that's all over.
Mm-hmm.
Australia's having that problem, and Ardsley's had that problem for a long time. Every town has it.
Mm-hmm.
Ardsley's in bad shape. Irvington's in bad shape. I think we probably are in better shape here in Hastings than most of the towns.
Right.
Australia's in pretty good shape. They have pretty good manpower.
But you are concerned.
Yes, it's something to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Australia is doing a good thing up there. They're building the buildings up there, and the volunteers are going to get the preference to the apartments,
Mhm.
which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It costs money to live today, and the young fella starting out and getting
Right.
married, you know, a lot of them have 2 jobs,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes it hard.
Now, tell me the circumstances about the founding of the ambulance corps.
Well, I was coming down the Broadway one day, and this guy sitting on the curb there, and I said, "What's the matter?" He said, "I just had an accident with my car, and I'm hurt, and I'm waiting for the ambulance." I said, "How long have you been waiting?" "Yeah, I've been waiting about an hour." I said, "No kidding." Yeah, so anyway, ambulance finally come down from Dobbs Ferry Hospital. And,
Was that a volunteer ambulance corps ambulance?
I think there was a charge. I think the hospital sent out the bill. And there was the Brown brothers at the time were operating it. And I imagine I'm not sure. I think the ambulance belonged to the hospital. And the Brown brothers, they operated it, and I think they probably got a fee for operating it. I'm not sure, because it wasn't a part of our department, you know. So, and I brought it up at the warden meeting about starting the ambulance corps, and that's how we got started.
You brought it up at a meeting where?
The fire warden meeting.
Okay. Did you need authorization from the village?
Did we what?
Need authorization from the village or anything?
No. What for? They had nothing to do with the fire department.
Well, did they provide the first ambulance?
No.
How did you get the first ambulance?
Went out and worked for it.
Well, by that
and
time...
for the second ambulance, too, we went out
Really?
and worked for it. The biggest donation we got well, we put on a campaign, and we circulated the town, you know, with letters and so on, and then we went out on a Saturday night, we blew the fire whistle, and on a Saturday night we went out, and then we canvassed the town and collected as much money as we could. And then I went up to see Mrs. Benedict, you know, from the Anderson.
Yes.
And I had quite a talk with her, and she was out in the garden picking flowers, and so she gave me $1,500. So the ambulance that time was somewhere around $7,000 or $8,000. It was a Cadillac. It was a good ambulance. It was a nice job. So I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years later, you know, we had to get another one. So I went back to see Mrs. Benedict again. And again, I met her out in the yard, the garden. And I said, you know, we got to get a new ambulance. And I said, I'm looking for a donation, you know, and so on. She was a nice person. And she said, okay. She said, last time I gave you $1,500. I said, yeah. And I said, but they cost more money now. So she said, I'll give you $2,500. I said, that's fine. So she gave us $2,500. And that's how we bought the first and second ambulance.
And then the third ambulance?
The third ambulance the village paid for. Yeah. By that time, the ambulance corps proved itself that the village fathers knew that the village needed an ambulance because Dobbs Ferry no longer had an ambulance. The one thing, when we started the ambulance corps, all the doctors were sort of angry at us because they thought we're going to take business away from Dobbs Ferry. And it didn't work out that way at all.
You mean away from Dobbs Ferry Hospital?
Yeah. It didn't work out that way at all. We brought business to them.
I see.
Yeah. So it was a lot of fun. We ordered the ambulance. We had meetings, and the different fellas had different ideas what they wanted in an ambulance. And anyway, we ordered the ambulance. The building was the ambulance was going to come in 2 weeks. We had no place to put it.
This is the first ambulance?
Yeah, the first ambulance. We didn't have a room for it. So, Mel Haynes he was street commissioner then. And behind
What was his name?
Mel Haynes.
Yes.
And
he was a member of Uniontown?
He was a member of Uniontown. He was also a fire chief. And I said, hey Mel, he says, I want one of those buildings back there for the ambulance. He says, no, you're not going to get it. I said, just say, yeah. I said, we got to get it. I said, I got the ambulance coming in 2 weeks. So anyway, I got a hold of him on a Saturday morning with the mayor, Mayor Philly. So I had him up there. I said,
Where did you have him?
Up behind Hook and Ladder. There was a building, a shack up there. They used to have salt in it, you know. They used to store the salt in there. So I said, we could take this building. They only had a little door like this to go in. I said, we'll knock the front out. We'll put overhead doors in it. And they said, go ahead. So that's what we did. I got all the boys together, and the firemen. They went up there. We put a a cement block partition so that the salt next door wouldn't affect the ambulance.
Mm-hmm.
Would eat the metal on the ambulance. We put overhead doors, put lights in, put ceilings in. There was no floor, it was only a dirt floor. We put concrete floors in. All the boys all did that themselves.
All volunteer?
All volunteers from the fire department, that's right.
Wow.
So
From all the different companies? Or was...
mostly union town fellows.
Mm-hmm.
And we got in there nights and weekends, and 2 weeks we had the building ready for the ambulance.
Wow. Sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, it was. It was worth it. They did a good job. They're still doing a good job.
What do you think about the future of the ambulance corps? Do you have concerns about that?
Oh, I think the ambulance corps is here to stay.
What, tell me what you mean.
Well, the community needs an ambulance.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have 2 ambulances,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know how they're ever going to do without the ambulance.
Mm-hmm.
I think the time might come when you see, a lot of people don't know this, but you can't be a member of the ambulance corps unless you're a fireman.
Why is that?
Well, at that time, you know, we could have gotten almost anybody to join the ambulance, you know, a lot of them just, you know, just for the glory of it,
I see.
see. But today, in order for you to be a member of the ambulance corps, you've got to take a test and you've got to have a certain amount of experience. You just can't pick up a pressure no more and just drag them to the hospital.
Right. Now, but first they have to join the fire department?
Right.
Okay.
But I think that's going to have to change someday.
Do you?
I think they're going to have to take like maybe a male nurse or even a lady nurse and let them be members.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think a question of time that it will come to that.
Mm-hmm. What about a woman who might not be a trained nurse? I mean, she may not be a registered nurse, but she might have taken
The enthusiasm.
and some courses.
Yeah, well, she's got to take training for it.
Right.
She's got to learn all the
As a man would.
recitation and everything to operate the ambulance.
Right.
You got to know how to drive it. That's the easiest part. But there's so much stuff in that ambulance.
Mm-hmm.
You just to look at it, you know, there's a lot of gadgets in there.
Mhm.
You know, and oxygen and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And you got to know how to use it.
And you can see the day that a woman who was properly trained would be able to do that.
Yeah, I
Oh.
think so.
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can you see that happening soon?
Well, I don't know if it'll happen soon, but I think it's going to happen.
Isn't there a need for more people to man the ambulances?
Well, sometimes you see that the men of the ambulance, that they try to hang around as much as they can. You know, they try to be in town as much as they can, but they have things to do too.
Sure.
And sometimes they have to put that alarm in twice, you know, for the ambulance to roll.
Mm-hmm.
And they have their own life to live too, these fellows, and it makes it hard. And they should have somebody, you know, for a little relief.
What is preventing the ambulance corps from inviting women to join now? Trained
Only
women.
that when it was started, that it was set up that way, that you had to be a fireman,
Mm-hmm.
a member of any branch of the fire department,
Mhm.
before you could join the ambulance corps.
Right.
But we used to, even before we had the ambulance, we used to have instructors come in and teach us all that stuff, even before we bought the ambulance.
Right.
We always took courses in first aid.
Right. Can you see women actually in the fire department?
Well, I don't think so. I don't believe the fire department is a place for women.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that stuff is heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the hoses we get today is about half the weight of the hoses we used to have years ago. That old hose was so heavy.
Really?
It take a good man to pick up the length of that hose. When that hose is saturated and you got a certain amount of water in there, it's heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's the place for the woman, you know, to try to climb one of those big ladders and chop holes in the roof. And they wouldn't do it at home. Why should they do it in the fire department?
Mm-hmm. Tell me how you got your nickname.
What?
How did you get your nickname?
Oh, gee, I don't know. I think one of the teachers called me Rooster one day or something.
Oh.
Yeah, and that stuck with me all the time.
Do you remember what you were doing when...
No.
So you've had it ever since elementary school?
Yeah. Yeah, long time.
Mr. Aluisio, do you remember what was in that the building that's now Amjo's? Can you tell me about the history of that little group of stores there
Yeah.
on Farragut Avenue? Is that the corner of Rose Street?
The Green Street.
Corner of Green Street.
Yeah. Well, there was always some kind of a stand there years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And there were always Greeks. See, there used to be a little Coney Island down there. There used to be a trolley run, you know, into Hastings,
Mm-hmm.
and it used to come over the bridge and stop on Main Street. And then from there...
Come over which bridge?
What?
Come over which bridge?
The Warburg Avenue Bridge.
Okay.
You go, you know, right down
Mhm.
to Yonkers, and you get down to Getty Square, and you get a transfer, you get down to 242nd Street,
Mhm.
or you get a transfer, get down to McLean Avenue, and down Webster Avenue, and down through there. Okay, so then there used to be a little dinky that used to run from Hastings, from Main Street, over to Uniontown, up
Mhm.
Farragut Road, right, and stop there at Green Street.
At the corner of Farragut and Green.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then on a Sunday, they used to run the special cars up, special trolleys, with the sides open and everything, and fresh air trolleys, we used to call them.
Mm-hmm.
And they down in the corner of where that gas station is there now, that have so much trouble, where the gas leaked into the ground, corner of the Pira and Farragut.
Mm-hmm.
That whole area in there, we used to call it the sand pit.
Mm-hmm.
There's all sand in there. And there used to be little carnivals in there
Mm-hmm.
in the summertime. And so people used to come up from the city on a trolley and walk down from Green Street, down Farragut Road, and down to the little carnival or bazaar, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
Like that was going on quite a while. And but there was always a little stand there, and it was always run by Greeks. But the most popular one that I can remember was Pete Lunas. He had a little store there, and then he gradually started to build it up.
Is that Lunas? Lunas?
Yeah,
Was he Greek?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they're all Greeks. There's the Greeks in there now, yeah.
Yes.
Mrs. Saris, she's a Greek. And,
Oh, I didn't know that.
oh, yeah, you know Miss Saris was Greek.
I do know Mrs. Saras, but I didn't know she was Greek.
Yeah.
I mean, I never thought about it, I guess.
Well, after Lunas got out of there.
Now, Mrs. Saros, that name is T-S-E-R-O-S.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
John Saris and his wife come in there.
Is that the Mrs. Saras who's there now, or was it
Yeah.
her parents?
Yeah, that's the one.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, Lunas, he built the building where the liquor store was.
Mm-hmm.
Airjo's got something in there now.
Card shop.
Yeah, and he built that, and then upstairs he had a big hall. They had the Rainbow. I think they called it Rainbow. It was like a nightclub up there.
Oh.
Yeah, they operated during Prohibition. And then let's see.
Did that Rainbow, is a speakeasy?
Yeah,
Did that extend over where the Amjo store is?
no.
Oh, just over where the ice cream card
Right.
store is.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
There's about what? There's about I think there's 2 apartments up there now.
Mm-hmm.
And now then the brick plot where Amjo's is now, I'm not sure whether Pete Lunas built that, or whether that was built later on by somebody else. I don't know.
But that all was there before you had your steam laundry.
What?
Those buildings were there before you had your steam laundry in 1929 or 30.
Oh yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a liquor store, there was a bar in that place there for a while, on the corner where Amjo's is.
Oh,
There's a bar in there. And then
what was that called? Do you remember?
No. He was only in there a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And then John Saris came in the picture.
Mm-hmm. Did he buy the whole building?
Yeah, he bought the whole corner.
Mm-hmm.
And they operated there quite a while.
What did they have there?
We had a grocery store, delicatessen grocery.
Mm-hmm.
And then after a while, they opened up the liquor store.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Mrs. Harris ran that for quite a while. And then they rented the big store out.
Mm-hmm. Did your building where you had the steam laundry, what had that been before you opened the steam laundry?
The garage.
Oh, and then after the laundry it...
They reverted back to the garage.
Okay. Mr. Aluisio, what church did you go to in Hastings when you were growing up?
St. Matthew's.
Uh-huh. And as a young child, did you go to the, like,
Pardon
religious...
me?
As a young child, did you go to the religious classes there and
Yeah,
things?
a few.
Mm-hmm. But you didn't go to school there ever?
No.
Did any of your brothers?
What?
Did any of your brothers?
No. My wife did.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you know that?
Yeah, because I saw her picture. Do you remember anything about a women's suffrage march through Hastings? You would have been about 10 years old.
No.
Do you remember temperance people? You know, marching or demonstrating or talking against alcohol?
No.
But you do remember speakeasies during the Prohibition?
Oh, yeah. Well, of course, the biggest one in the county was across the street.
What was that?
The Farragut Inn.
You think that was the biggest in the county?
They used to mix their stuff on Olinda Park, you know, on Olinda Avenue.
Yes.
And Pete Carey was a member of Urinetown Hose Company. He used to work for them, and he used to mix it. You know, you take just raw alcohol and mix it with water or what, I don't know what. And a lot of these people used to go blind, you know, drinking that stuff.
Really?
Oh, sure.
Now, where did they mix it on Olinda?
And in the basement of one of the houses. There was Morris Kaufman. You shouldn't repeat this, I don't think.
They're all dead.
Yeah, the Morris Kaufman, well, I guess some of the sons are.
Well, I talked to the son in Florida, and he's not interested in.
No.
He doesn't care.
Where's he living?
I can't remember. I called him a few years ago.
Which one? Who you talked to?
I don't
Was it
remember.
Milton? Was it Herbie?
I don't think it was either of that. It may have been Milton.
He was a little nutty. Herbie was in my class in school. I didn't know whether he was still alive or not.
One of them is. I don't know whether either of those two, but
Yeah.
I did talk to one of the sons.
Well, let's see. Morris.
There was Sam Kaufman, wasn't there?
There was Sam and then Morris. I don't think they had any children. I think Morris had a daughter. These ones you were talking to, that was one of the nephews.
Maybe.
Yeah, they lived on Main Street there, right where the Corey store is now. There used to be a little colonial building there, and they lived in there for a while. Let's see, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, about mixing the liquor.
Okay, now, Farragut Inn was owned by...
Kaufman Brothers.
Mm-hmm, and they lived on Olinda?
They built those two brick houses on Olinda.
Okay.
Morris lived in one, Sam lived in the other.
And where did they mix the alcohol?
On Olinda Avenue, in
The
one of the basements.
Basement?
And Pete would take the stuff out at night, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, and drive from here all the way up to Pitchgill and hit different taverns, different speakeasies, and unload it.
Hmm. Did the police know what was happening?
Oh, I think so. There was prohibition, but nobody wanted it, you know, it was one of those things.
Right.
And I guess their stuff was pretty good. I don't know of any, I didn't hear of anybody that used their stuff that ever went blind.
Uh-huh.
But a lot of people did go blind, but I don't know about, I don't think it was any of their stuff.
Now, what was it like? You know, there was the Farragut Inn, and they couldn't have it be an open bar. I mean, it was...
Oh yeah, there was open bar. You could sell what, that 0.5% beer, and then down the basement they had the bowling alleys in the basement. Boy, the fellas, a lot of fellas just were there and play horses, and play the horses, you know. That was a big thing one time around here. All these old timers used to play the horses.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, they did a big business over there, and they had before Prohibition, they had a good clientele. You know, they used to have like Longview.
Mm-hmm.
They used to have people stop there. You know, they get $1.25 for a bottle of ginger ale and stuff like that. And from here they go to maybe the Pitchgill or Albany or something. You know, like that. And they used to have a doorman in there to open your door and let you in and escort you in. And
Oh.
they used to have a band in there, you know, an orchestra rather, playing all the time.
Was this up on one of the top floors?
No, it was right on street level.
Uh-huh.
Mhm,
And then
right
I've
up
seen
over.
old pictures of the upstairs.
Yeah, upstairs, they never had much upstairs. Well, no, they had rooms upstairs where you could rent a room for a night.
Like to have a big dinner?
Yeah. Well, no, well, it was a lot of small rooms.
Oh.
I think there was something like 10 small rooms up there.
Oh, a bedroom?
Yeah.
You could stay overnight?
Yeah, and they had, you know, they had a wash basin and so on in there.
Hmm.
Yeah. And, but the big business was, you know, they had the doorman there, open the door for you, and with the orchestra playing, and
Mm-hmm.
so the big shots used to stop there.
Well, now, where was the speakeasy part during Prohibition?
Well, that was probably downstairs where the bowling alleys were.
Uh-huh.
There was a little bar down there.
Okay. You were telling me about the Kaufman brothers.
Yeah, when the Depression came, they owned a lot of property.
Mm-hmm. Did they build all these?
No, they
Oh.
built on Main Street and Warburton, where the stationery store is.
Yes.
They built all those, they built the 3 or 4 stores there on Main Street and around the corner.
Where Corey's
beauty
Glass
parlor.
is now?
Pardon?
Where Corey's Glass is
Right.
now, and where the clothing store is now, but it
Right.
used to be Benson's department store?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the stationery store
Mm-hmm.
and the beauty parlor, right?
Mm-hmm.
They built that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they built the 2 houses, the 2 brick houses up there. They were, those days, they were considered good houses. It cost a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Then they owned a lot of property in Mount Vernon, in the Bronx, and all over. And when the Depression came, they lost everything.
Hmm.
That everything mortgaged right up, got all the money they could on mortgages.
Mhm.
Never paid anybody off.
Hmm.
And when the time came, they lost their home up in Belinda Park. They lost this building up here. They lost everything. Lost the building across the street.
Who bought the Farragut Inn when they lost it?
Guy named Charlie Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
And
Is he the man who used to live up on the top of Villard Hill?
no,
Oh. He was a fireman, that Charlie Anderson.
oh,
The man who lived on the top of Villard Hill.
he was never fireman. He
Oh.
was a member of River Manor. River Manor got a lot of members on the books that were never firemen. He was a builder. He was a contractor.
Oh, he did a lot down at Anaconda, I
Right.
think. Mm-hmm.
But this Charlie Anderson used to work for, excuse me, Otis Elevator Company,
Mm-hmm.
and he run it for a while. And he wasn't making any money. Are you recording this?
Mm-hmm. They're all long since gone.
Yeah. Well, I don't want this repeated anyway. I'll tell you anyway. And anyway, he needed some money, so I loaned him some money. And he was a nice guy. He's a Swedish fellow. But anyway, he put on a good steak. Anybody who went in there and had dinner,
Mm-hmm.
he cooked a very good steak. And you know, he wasn't a chef. He just something picked up himself. And so then he couldn't make it go. So he brought us here one day. He says, "You give me X number of dollars." I don't know. He says, "I'll turn the building over to you." I said, "Okay." So I gave him some more money, and he turned the building over to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I sold it later on. I sold it to Bernie.
Oh, did you operate it for a while?
No, I was fixing it up. I was going to operate it. I was fixing it up, and then Bernie was operating the. Bernie used to work for me.
Here in the store?
Yeah, he was an electrician. Him and Ike Wild.
Do I know Mr. Eichwild?
Probably not.
How do you spell his name?
Ikwild.
Mm-hmm.
But he got out. Him and his brother-in-law bought the restaurant in Yonkers on the river.
The lighthouse or
The
something?
lighthouse.
Mm-hmm.
They operated that for a couple of years, but they were going broke.
Mm-hmm.
So I was fixing this place up over there. I was going to rent it out, you know, because it was just laying there. It was hard times. And Bernie walked in there one day and he said, "We're not making no money down there." And he wanted to rent this and so on and so forth.
Oh, Bernie was down at the
Yeah,
lighthouse.
he took over the lighthouse, him and
Mhm.
his brother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, so they took it over. So after I was in there a couple of years, he wanted to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
said, okay. So we settled on a price, and when it comes to closing, he didn't have enough money to pay for the back. You know what it is when you buy a house, you got to pay for the back taxes and back insurance that you paid. And he didn't have any of that, so I paid it up for him. I don't want that in there.
Okay. Did he pay you back?
Oh yeah, sure. He paid all. The building is his now. He paid it all off.
Mm-hmm. Have you owned other buildings downtown here?
No. Well, we owned a couple down on the South Side Avenue. Well, I owned that with Tony Vendetti. Tony Vendetti and I, we built some houses.
Mm-hmm.
And we bought some buildings down there, which wasn't...
Was this on Railroad Avenue?
Yeah, down at the corner of South Side and Railroad, right on the corner there.
Oh.
Right across the way from the railroad station.
Oh.
We fixed the buildings up. They were really messed up. We fixed them up pretty good.
Those buildings are still there?
Yeah.
That big brown one?
Right.
On the end?
Mm-hmm.
You owned that?
Yeah, there's really 3 buildings there. There's one in the back.
Did you build it?
No,
Oh.
we didn't build those shacks. No, we should have got mixed up in that, but Tony thought he'd get to it there and fix it up. They
Mm-hmm.
did. They did a good job fixing it up, but it was the times. The times were no good. Nobody had any money. It was right after the war. Everybody was broke.
Mm-hmm.
And then we built some houses up in the manor. We built 3 houses up Ballard Hill. We owned a lot of property up there.
Did you?
Yeah, we bought it all from Patterson, who was the head of the Daily News in New York.
Hmm.
And
When did you buy the land?
about 1950.
Mm-hmm.
And so we built a house up there. Gerson lives in one of them now, the superintendent of Ferry Schools.
Oh, okay.
And right next door is another brick house. And Blackburn, he just sold that. He run a business in Dallas Ferry, a wire business.
What streets are these on?
Pardon?
What street?
On Clinton Avenue. You go up Ballard Avenue,
Oh.
and Ballard Avenue runs into Clinton.
Yes.
And the second house on Clinton Avenue, you see the 2 brick houses. We built those brick houses.
With fabulous river views.
Yes, and across the street, we built one house.
Uh-huh.
And then we owned a lot of property across the street. Well, we sold that property off, 100-foot frontage, 200-foot deep, with all the utilities in, for $3,000 a plot.
Yeah. I mean, that property with those river views.
Oh, today you
Yeah. Did you build that white brick house?
the white brick house,
There are 2 white brick houses.
the red brick.
Oh, red brick. Okay.
This is right, just as you go into Clinton Avenue.
Right.
The first is a white house.
Mhm.
Some doctor lives in there, some not. Then you go past his house, and there's a brick house.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where Gershel lives.
Mm-hmm.
And then next door, Blackburn. I understand he just sold it.
Mm-hmm.
And then across the street, we built the one across the street where Gould bought it. I don't know if you know Gould.
That house is set way back.
The Gould house was to go way down, around, and they got a big piece of property over there, you know.
Yep. Did you own that property?
No.
Mm-hmm.
I wish we did. But he still owns it, but he got
Mhm.
married and his wife passed away, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he bought a house up there and everything up in Point, what the heck they call that, Point something up there. Up at everything, but nowhere as nice as the house he bought. I don't know why he moved. I guess this house was too big for a beautiful piece of property and a beautiful house inside.
Right.
The bathrooms and everything is beautiful.
Mr. Aluisio, we've heard that during the Depression that there were a lot of, quote, village residents, people who lived maybe even south of the bridge or who might have lived over some of the buildings on Main and Warburton, that a lot of people in this area held mortgages on houses up in Riverview Manor and Hudson Heights.
You mean people over there
Mhm.
held mortgages for people up in the manor? Well,
We've heard that.
I don't know about that.
Kind of vague
I
stories.
used to call the River Manor Mortgage Hill.
Right.
But who had the mortgage, I don't know.
I see. Okay.
Because these people down here never had mortgages. If they bought a house down here, they paid cash for it.
Right. By people down here, you mean
People on Warburton and Washington and
right,
so on.
South Side and
Yeah.
Division and things.
They lived in those houses. It was theirs. They didn't have no mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
All they paid was taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And so they used to call those places up there. Those people bought houses up there. They all had mortgages. They used to call it Mortgage Hill.
Okay.
Of course, everybody has mortgages today.
Right.
But we built another house on Summer Drive, 50 Summer Drive, a beautiful house for the band leader. I see he just passed away last year. He moved to Florida. He was a very popular guy. Then we built another one on 6 South Drive. Oh, we built another one, 22 Terrace, across the street from you, with the stone front.
Where the Gerards lived.
What?
Where Maxine Gerard lived.
You're right.
Oh, now when you say you built that.
Tony Vendetti and I were partners.
Oh.
Yeah.
So he did most of the construction and you did the plumbing and
We did
heating?
the plumbing and heating, electrical work and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And then we did the one on 6 South Drive.
Mm-hmm.
What's the name of the lady's name in there? I forgot now. Her husband passed away a couple of years ago. Right on the corner, we come downhill, South Drive. Got the house right on the right-hand side.
Marion Drake.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
right. Yeah. We
Oh, you
that.
built a lot of houses.
Yeah.
Now, in those days, you could do plumbing as well as electrical work?
Yeah, well, we did heating, mostly heating.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we still do heating.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot of heating. Right now, we have about 6 boilers up in it.
Oh,
Yeah, we do a lot of.
these are like oil burners?
Well, there was one time we used to sell almost 1 burner a day, oil burners.
When was this?
That was from maybe 1935 until 1940. Yeah, we used to sell a lot of oil. Well, we had the franchise, the Delco Heat franchise from the Yonkers to Pleasantville.
Oh, I was going to say, I couldn't imagine how you could sell one a day in Hastings.
Yeah, and we used to get a lot of the leads, the prospects from Delco, which was part of General Motors. They were advertising in the New York papers,
Mm-hmm.
and we used to get all the business through General Motors.
That must have been very lucrative.
Yeah, well, it was that time because jobs were hard to get, and we put a lot of oil burners in.
Mm-hmm.
Then after a while, we got away from that because we went into gas. We still put them in now. In fact, I got paid for one now we put in on Nichols Drive for Panetta, maybe you know them.
Mm-hmm.
And we put one in there because there's no gas on the street, so we put in oil.
Mm-hmm.
We used to sell a lot of oil burners.
Mm-hmm. Did you do much electrical work outside of Hastings?
Oh, we still do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we did a big job last year up in, is this recording?
Yeah, but I can turn it
Not
off. Mr. Aluisio, when you and your brothers were growing up, did you go down to the riverfront very much?
No.
Nope.
No.
Did you ever swim in the Hudson River here at
No.
Hastings?
We used to go to Mount Hope over the Sawmill River.
Oh,
I think you have a right to know that.
right. Mr. Aluisio, one time when we were talking, you said something about that you were the person who suggested to the mayor that they use the old quarry area for dumping.
Yeah, that's right. They didn't have no place to dump. They were dumping. They were dumping down at the continuation of Railroad Avenue, and that was full, so they had to get another place. So again, on a Saturday morning, he came in the store with Mel Haynes, and I said, "You want a place to dump? I'll show you where to dump." And I took him down there and showed him this quarry. They never knew the quarry was there.
Right. Now the quarry for a time had been a lovely park at one time.
It was never a park.
Didn't have an artificial lake and plantings and things?
No. It was just a big hole full of water.
Oh, we thought it had beautiful plantings.
No, never a park. It was very dangerous. It was a dangerous condition there. I'm surprised that,
Mm-hmm.
some of the children didn't fall in.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a bank. So there was a big plank there, and I grabbed this plank and I threw it down into the water.
Mm-hmm.
And it went way down.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like a long time, and then it finally popped out
Oh.
and come way up out of the water.
Mhm.
And they realized that thing was deep because that thing must have gone down maybe 20, 25 feet. I don't know. It was deep.
Uh-huh.
So they dumped there for a good many years.
So they just started dumping in the lake,
Mhm.
in the pond.
Yeah.
Would you call it a pond or a lake?
Well, we used to call it a quarry.
Okay. But it was
But,
filled with water.
They had to get some kind of permission. Anaconda used to use some of that water for, you know, instead of buying water.
Mm-hmm.
The overflow from the quarry used to go down, and they used to go down to the Anaconda.
Mm-hmm.
And they would pick it up down there and use it in there for cooling down their copper, you know.
Was there an above-ground pipe that went down?
No, they were all buried after a
Mm-hmm.
while. You could see them right near the aqueduct, but then they went down underneath the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Can you see them today there?
what?
Can you see them today there?
Oh, I don't know, I haven't been
Oh.
down there for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
They take a big piece of copper,
Mm-hmm.
and in order to make a thin piece of wire, they'd have to heat it and go to a die and cut it down, and so they used to use that water, I guess, for cooling the copper off.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that's what they did with it.
Now, so what did they do? First start dumping stuff into the water to fill it up, or?
Yeah. They just backed the trucks and down and filled it up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It took a long time.
Mhm.
It was a big undertaking.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember when the village board gave the public dock, or traded the public dock to Anaconda?
Oh, Barry did that. Mayor Barry.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, there was some exchange of some property.
Yes. South of
He gave the
Zinser.
dock, I think for that land down below.
Gave them underwater rights
Yeah,
to land under the water below Zinser,
yeah, down where the boat club is.
and the village intended to put garbage and stuff there and create a park. That was the plan.
Well, there was at one time there where the state stopped all that.
Yes.
You couldn't dump into the river one time.
Right.
But they stopped that. I think you can still do it, providing you will put some kind of steel
Barriers or something?
steel barriers, or maybe 4x8 pieces of steel, heavy steel, maybe big galvanized, and you drive them into the water. I think maybe you could do it if you got permission from the state.
Mm-hmm.
You could probably still do it, I don't know.
But back in those days, you were still able to do it.
Yeah, I think you could do it then.
But people on Pinecrest complained that they didn't want a garbage fill below them.
Yeah, I
Do you
don't know.
remember anything about that?
No.
Do you remember, though, them giving the dock to Anaconda?
Yeah. Well, that's where the Raleigh used to come up and park in there.
Mm-hmm.
The Raleigh, you know, everybody had, you wanted something, you know, you go to a store and you order something, you know, you say, well, it's coming up on a Raleigh.
Uh-huh.
You know, it comes from New York, up the Hastings, you know.
Did things used to come to your store on the Raleigh?
No.
'Cause your
It was
store-
all way before that.
Uh-huh.
And that was always a good excuse. Well, it's on a Raleigh, it's coming up on a Raleigh. You know,
Mhm.
it'll take it one a day to get up, but that was the excuse the merchants had.
Oh, I see. Even if the merchandise wasn't coming on the Raleigh?
Well, I don't know that. Only he knew that.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know whether that dock would have done us any good to keep it.
Uh-huh. Had you spent any time there on the public dock when you were
No.
growing up or as a young man?
Well, the only time I spent down there was with the fire trucks pumping water, you know, to teach the men how to use the pump.
Mm-hmm.
We get down there with the fire trucks and pump water out of the river,
Mm-hmm.
and try out the pumps, make sure the pumps are working properly, and you get a new member in, you got to teach them how to use it.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a lot of experience that way with the dock.
Were you able to continue doing that after Anaconda got the dock?
Oh, sure.
They let you go
well,
down?
that wasn't the part. The dock, the way we used to use was down behind, we used to go in, what's the name of that factory down there? They're still down there now. You go down the ramp and make a right turn.
Robeson?
It wasn't a village dock.
Oh,
This was the Anaconda dock.
I see.
Anaconda filled that in.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when they were filling that in, we used to see the trucks go down with these great big rocks, as big as this, you know, one rock would fill up a big truck. And they dumped in there for several years.
To create landfill?
Yeah, to hold up, to keep the river from taking the buildings out.
I see.
And now, a lot of that, you go down there now, you can see a lot of it is sinking.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys are going to build those buildings on it. They're going to have to do some piling.
Mm-hmm. So the rocks kind of served as pilings.
Yeah.
Hmm. Where did they get the big rocks?
Well, you know, when they built the houses, and the
Mm-hmm.
pictures all full of rocks.
Right, yeah. Okay. Mr. Aluisio, you just were saying that Mr. Thomas Reynolds was the president of the village
Right.
when what?
Well, we bought the first fire trucks.
Uh-huh.
That was the three Max, 3 used Max.
Right. Okay, so I'll have to look up and see when he was president. He was also the first what?
He had a big job in the county. Was a district attorney, though. He got a job in the county. He got a big job in the county that time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what his job was.
Is it his brother who lives in River Glen?
That's his son.
That's his son.
Yeah. His name is Tom too, I think. Or they call him Bubby. I think it's Tom.
Mm-hmm.
Or he's got a brother named Tom.
Mm-hmm.
But I would talk to him, and you could ask him what job his father had. He had a county job
Mm-hmm.
because he was mayor after he got mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Just between you, he was an importer of Italian gloves.
Mr. Reynolds was?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the Italians made very good gloves.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess all the good clothing at that time come from Italy. Everything was hand sewed, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess then after a while they started making the gloves in this country, I suppose. And that business just died off. And then he got this. Then of course he was the president of Hastings, but that wasn't, you know, they never got anything for that.
Mm-hmm.
Now when they get $1,200 now, but they didn't get anything that
Right.
time. And then he got this job over in the county.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether he was the first supervisor. I think he might have been the first supervisor
Where did he live with his family?
on the corner of Allard and Broadway.
Where the group home is now?
Where what?
Where the group home is?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.